Hey everyone, Adam here from CompleteWorshipDrummer.com, and in this video I'm going to teach you 5 worship drumming fills for beginners. Fills are basically transitions on the drums, and they are used on the last measure of one section of the song going into the next section of the song. Typically, the more significant change in the song, the longer and more involved your fill should be. The number one challenge the beginners face concerning fills is making sure you land them at the right spot. In order to do that, you need to know when to start them inside of your groove so they land right where you want them to, typically on beat 1 of the following measure. So on top of teaching you these fills, I'm going to show you where to start them so they always land exactly where you want them to. This is where counting is an extremely important skill, because if you're just trying to feel it without counting, then you'll more than likely make a lot of mistakes. If you're making a lot more mistakes than you're doing things correctly, your brain is going to reinforce the mistakes. Then you have to spend more time to unlearn your mistake. So when practicing new fills, it's important to, number 1, fully comprehend what you're trying to play before you start bashing away on the drums. And then number 2, count out loud so you can start your fill in the right spot. So let's go ahead and dive right into fill number 1.
Okay guys, so we're here at the kit, and the first fill I want to show you actually uses what we call flams. And a flam is when you hit any voicing on the kit with both hands, but one hand hits slightly before the other. If we're playing a left-handed flam, we're actually going to be playing the right hand before the left, and then vice versa. It's a little bit confusing, but the flams are actually labeled after the louder stroke, and I'll show you what I mean. I could demonstrate a flam right here where we have our starting position is going to be like this, where our right hand is higher than our left. And so that's a right-handed flam because the right-handed stroke is louder. And then a left-handed flam is where our left hand is higher than the right. And so those are flams, and we're going to use flams in this fill, so I needed to show you that first. And then we're also going to be using unisons or double stops. Is when you're hitting 2 or more voicings at the same time. And when we play unisons, we can play them at the exact same time, since you're hitting 2 different drums, or you can flam them to make them sound beefier. And so for this fill, we're actually going to be playing our toms. And so for the fills, don't worry about playing the exact toms I'm playing. If you have 2 rack toms up here, just you can play those, or you can play your rack tom and your floor tom. It doesn't matter as much. So just showing you the unison, you can play them at the exact same time like this. Or you can play them flammed to make them sound a little beefier. And you might not be able to tell, but I'm actually playing my left hand before my right, just to make them sound a little bit beefier. So we're going to play a normal 8th note groove like this, and we're going to count it like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and so we're going to actually keep that counting exactly the same the whole time for our fill. And on beat 4, we're going to play our flam on the snare. So like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Just like that. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. On the and of 4, which is the and after 4, we're going to play unisons on the rack tom and the floor tom. You can play those at the exact same time, or you can play them as flams. So the whole thing is like this. 4 and 4 and since both hands are available after we play that, we're actually going to play both crashes with the bass drum. And so if you only have one crash on your kit, you can play the ride and the crash together, or you can just hit one crash, or you can hit your ride. If you don't have the exact same setup as me, don't worry about that as much. Just kind of figure out how it's going to fit. And one thing I might suggest, if you only have one crash, is you actually hit the crash with the left hand. so that you're ready to bring your right hand back to the groove when you're going to continue the groove after the fill. And so one common mistake that many beginners make is forgetting to include the bass drum with the crash at the end of a fill. This is a crucial element of drumming that should never be overlooked. To ensure that your fills sound polished and complete, always remember to finish them off with a powerful bass drum hit and a crash cymbal. With that in mind, I'm gonna show you this whole fill here, but you gotta remember bass drum with the crash, like that, bass drum and crash. Because if you play your fill without the crash, it just sounds like really lame and unfinished. Versus just doesn't sound finished. So here I'm gonna put this with the beat. So we're just counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and our snare and then toms. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So let's move on to fill number 2. Okay, for this next fill, we're going to still keep the counting exactly the same. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and we're going to play 4 strokes on our fill, starting with the snare and then moving around the toms like this. One more time. So I like to teach my students to work backwards in order to figure out where your fill has to start so it lands on beat 1. So if we want our fill to end on beat 1 with a crash and a bass drum, and there are 4 strokes in our fill, then that means we have to start our fill on beat 3. And so here it is, nice and slow with the beat and the counting. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 1. Here's a little bit faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and for that fill, I'm bringing my right hand over to my snare to start it. So I'm going right, left, crash, so that that way you have the right hand available for the crash when you're ready to do that. So make sure you practice these so you can get back to the groove after the fill. And remember, the most important thing is timing above all. So let's move on to fill number 3. We are going to play the exact same fill as the second one, but we are going to instead play right-handed flams around the drums. So the hardest part is going from your groove to playing the flam on the snare. And you want to make sure you're actually playing flams instead of hitting a single drum at the exact same time, because sometimes you can almost cancel out the drum if you do that. So you make sure that that left hand lands slightly before the right hand. And so the hardest part of this groove, again, is making sure the snare, we have the snare landing on beat 3, and then we're going to play flams around the drums like this. So we're just doing right hand flams around the drums there. And you want to make sure you're aiming dead center for those drums so you can get a nice full sound out of your drums. So after your fill, you can hit one crash or you can hit both crashes depending on how significant the change of the music is going to be. And here's the fill all together now. And so we're going to start on beat 3. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So like I said, we're keeping that counting nice and consistent. We're not speeding anything up. Everything's staying exactly the same because we're just playing eighth notes right now. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Like I say, you can hit both crashes if you want to, but that's the full demo of that one. Here it is a little bit faster. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, so for fill number 4, we're going to change the counting up a little bit. This time we're going to add an right after the and of 4. So the counting will be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then back to 1. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And so we're going to play the 4 and on the snare, starting with the right hand like this. 4 and 1. 4 and 1. And so I'm playing right, left, crash with the right hand. So right, left, crash. So the is the only left hand in there. So right, left, right. Just like that. So the main thing that you have to do in this fill is make sure you bring your right hand over to the snare for beat 4 instead of hitting it with your left like you usually do when you're just playing the groove. After that, you have 2 strokes for the and then you hit the crash on 1. And so here's a full demo, nice and slow. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. One more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So here's that fill number 4, a little faster, and we're going to go back to the groove. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. You wouldn't play every measure of that fill, but that gives you the idea, it gives you correct repetitions. And a really good way to practice these is actually practice the fill by itself. And make sure you get several correct repetitions before you try putting it in the groove. And then another thing is beginners usually get tripped up on is that the beat 1 is your crash. And so you don't want to add an extra beat 1 coming back to the hi-hat. So for example, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. So that's what a lot of beginners would do. So you want to make sure that when you hit this, this is your beat 1, and then you can play the and right after that. So 1 and 2, 1 and 2 to get the snare, or you can just leave out the and of 1, 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and then you continue your eighth notes on your hi-hat. So one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1 and 2. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of transitioning back to the groove. Okay, so let's move on to our next fill, and we're going to use that same idea as the last fill, but we're going to make it a little bit longer. So for this new fill, it's going to be pretty similar to the last one, but we're going to extend it. So we are going to start the fill on the and of 3, and with the same figure as before, we'll keep the same figure for beat 4 as well. So the difference with this fill is that we're actually going to be starting it on the and of 3, and then we're going to play similar rhythm as the last one. So the counting for this one is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So one more time. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. So here's the fill by itself, and we're actually going to start this one on the and of 3 once again. Want to make sure you guys understand you're starting that one on the and of 3. Since this fill is a little bit longer, I highly suggest practicing the fill and make sure you get correct repetitions of the fill before trying to put it into a groove. Okay, so for the anda of 3, we're going to play 2 hits on the rack tom. So anda, and then our 4 is going to be snare, and then our anda of 4 is going to be on the floor tom. So it goes like this. Anda 4, anda 1. Anda 4, anda 1. 3, anda 4, anda 1. Okay, so here it is with the counting and the groove. So 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Here it is a bit faster.
Okay guys, so now that you have the 5 fills to work on, I want to give you some practice tips. Number 1, practice these to the metronome in order to best simulate playing them in an actual band setting. Playing them to music is the next best thing, but the metronome leaves much less room for error. Number 2, practice the fill itself first before putting it in the beat. The fill itself also includes the crash and the bass drum together at the end. Number 3, slow all of this all the way down so you avoid learning and reinforcing mistakes. You might be wondering how slow I should start. If you find a tempo where you can easily perform the fills consistently without making mistakes, you've found your starting tempo. I want to wish you happy practicing, and if you're struggling to keep practice consistent, then check out my next video on the next screen, 6 reasons why you struggle to practice your drums and how to fix it. I'll see you guys in the next one.